Hello, this is another Women's Esports segment. So if you'd like to just introduce yourself and the job role that you do, please.
Sure. I'm Becky. I work for NSE and I am Senior Partnerships Manager. So I look after all of our existing partnerships that we've got and also talk to new potential partners that we might bring on board.
So how did you first get involved with esports?
So I've been playing games forever. I've always played video games for my entire life. I then discovered Dota in about 2015, I think. My brother introduced me to the game, and it was kind of, I'm not going to say love at first sight because playing Dota is really difficult, but it was just, he introduced me to it and I kind of fell in love with it. It was complex and I'd never really played online before, so it was my first kind of experience playing games online with other people. And at the time I just moved to a new country, so I was like, it was like a good way to like keep being social and make new friends through that kind of Dota community through the network. So that's how that was my first taste of esports. Professionally though, I think I'd worked in a variety of different roles and didn't really fall in love with any of them in terms of like the industries I was working in. I started out in like advertising and I also worked in the automotive industry for a little bit. I've also worked in property for a little bit and kind of, I liked the jobs, but like they weren't really my passion. And I thought, why don't I look at going into esports or gaming? And yeah, I've loved it ever since. And that was 2020 was when I got my first full-time role in esports.
Yeah. So what would you say helps you the most? What would you say to people who want to maybe get started but aren't really sure where to take that first step?
In terms of like professionally?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think knowing what you want to do is like what kind of role within the esports industry I think is important, because I have a lot of students kind of talking to me about, oh, I really want to work in the games or esports industry, but I'm not really sure what I want to do in that. I just know the industry, which is, I'm like, okay, well, great. You know what industry you want to go into, which is a start. But now you have to figure out what you actually want to do. Like think about what skills you have, or maybe if you've done part-time jobs in the past or work experience, like what did you enjoy out of that? How can you do more of that? And then also read job descriptions online and kind of get a thought on what role you actually want to do, because then you can say, okay, well, how can I get some experience in that? How can I do some work experience or do some volunteering or maybe some like part-time work, or maybe even creating your own, like if you're really wanting to go into like esports events, maybe you could make your own and kind of gives you a little bit of experience, and then hopefully then that will put you in good stead when you're actually applying to jobs.
Yeah. So what would you say so far has been the most memorable like experience that you've had?
So I think most memorable has to be Insomnia. At NSE, we hold the British University Esports Championship. And so being able to hold our spring finals at the Insomnia Gaming Festival was just amazing. I mean, it's so huge and I'd always wanted to go. And so to be able to go and work there for that weekend was just amazing. And speaking to the student community that I've been speaking to for the past 2 years and meeting them in real life was just, incredible. And being able to offer that experience to the students was awesome.
Cool. So what are your thoughts on how women are currently represented within esports?
I definitely think things are getting better. I do think there is slow progression, but I don't think the representation is particularly there yet. I mean, just in our community, we've seen so many more female students playing in our tournaments, and that just compared to like last year, we've seen an uptick in female participation in the championship. So hopefully, the more people kind of get involved and are playing, then hopefully that will also trickle into employment as well. Well, that's the hope.
Yeah. So what would you like to see then from or what do you like to see changed in the industry to make things more inclusive for women and marginalised genders?
I think it's always going to be a slow progress, and change doesn't happen overnight. And what would I like to see? Just seeing more women working in the esports industry is important, and also they're quite often behind the scenes as well. So I don't know, maybe more visibility on that, in terms of like the people who are working at the events, like the people who are making the games, and I think what's been done at the moment with the introduction of like women and non-binary tournaments, I do think that's like a good thing overall. I think it's just highlighting the people that are actually part of this community, right? That is important, and the introduction, of women and non-binary tournaments are a good thing. I think more spotlighting on the people that work in the industry. It's not really a good answer, though. I just think maybe a change in mentality has to happen in terms of the esports community themselves. Like going into games and having like sexist abuse hurled at you just for speaking through a microphone. I mean, like, why is that happening? And what can you do to stop that? I don't really know what you can do to stop that, but I think I do think change has happened slowly over the years, though, because I mean, when I first got involved within like the Dota 2 community, I got involved with a women's Dota 2 community quite early on. It was probably like 2016. And when I didn't create it, but I was involved in managing it, when it was kind of very in its early stages. And the reaction we got from the community was really bad. Lots of people just hated it and didn't see the reason why it existed. And we would get trolls trying to mass infiltrate our Discord. But then if you look at then, Dota Valkyries that was created, when was that? Maybe a year or two ago now, I think. So, yeah. The reaction from the community was very different. And I don't know whether that's because maybe there was more like talent in the space that were kind of behind it. But the community accepted it so much better than ours did back in 2016. And so I think, it's difficult to not be negative about this kind of stuff because you're like, what can we change? I actually don't really know. But I think slow change has happened. And I do think that's because of, just more visibility on, the women that work behind the scenes and also in front of the camera and having tournaments. It's just a bit more normalized, I think. Whereas, I think in the past it was just always assumed that esports was dominated by men. I mean, it still is, but I do think that balance is getting a bit more. It's getting better slowly. Yeah.
So then, speaking from a women esports perspective and touching on that, like you said a little bit, what kinds of things would you like to see from the Women Esports Initiative this year?
What I'd want to see from you guys is just, maybe this is a bit of a cop-out answer, but just like continuing to do what you're already doing, I think is great. The fact that you have like an elected board of people that work in the industry to kind of keep what you guys are doing, like to keep giving it, to keep the motion rolling, I guess, and making sure that what you're doing is for the right purposes and stuff like that. I think that's great. And I think the tournaments you guys support is also great. Maybe because you also already do content pieces around the people in the industry. So I think it's just more of everything that you're doing. I don't know whether there's something more that you could be doing. Maybe pick up a few different games, I guess, to do tournaments in. But just kind of keep on doing what you're doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
So speaking, I guess, now from like Student Champs perspective and then kind of events in general, why do you think events like the Student Champs, for example, are important for female students?
Yeah, I think they're super important because I think being able to come to an event and seeing all the people you're playing with and seeing everyone from different backgrounds that take part in the tournaments, I think it's important to kind of, you're always playing behind a screen and that person's behind a screen, and maybe like, I don't know, I'm not saying that people forget that they're people, but quite often with online gaming, you just kind of forget that you're playing against another person. And so it's bringing those people together to have that experience where you're kind of seeing, oh, I've actually played against this person like for this past year. And I think like, that is important. And I think just giving them the opportunity to like play on stage and see a professional event and to see the people working behind it as well. Because I mean, all this weekend we've seen you guys like running around doing stuff, and maybe it might get some of the students thinking, oh, maybe this is an industry I could work in. There's like all these jobs here, people win jobs here, and they're getting a little bit insight of kind of like what people do. And so yeah, and then maybe some female students might end up thinking that they might want to go into the esports industry afterwards as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So do you think student champs should have like a female only or marginalised genders only divisions separate from the normal kind of structure?
I think it potentially, but also I think it kind of, you kind of have to ask your community what they think they would want, right? I think if the student community were finding that women and other marginalised genders weren't taking part because they felt it was too male dominated, then it would be worth looking into. But I think really you'd kind of have to ask them and kind of let them decide, because they might say, actually, I only really want to play in like one tournament a week or whatever it is, and I actually want to play with like all of my friends and play with the team that I've been playing with. And so yeah, I think it's kind of if you're finding people aren't taking part because they don't feel like it's particularly inclusive, then maybe it's worth looking into.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Cool. So if we were to potentially do more games, like you said earlier, do you think there's any games in particular that would have a lot of interest or a lot of...
So I think the tournaments you currently do probably do capture like a lot of the female player base, I think, because there are... I think from the top of my head, I'm thinking like there are more women that play Valorant and League of Legends than, if you were going to introduce something like CSGO, that's very like male dominated. So I don't know. Maybe you could look at I'm not sure. Maybe you could even look at doing like a Teamfight Tactics tournament. I don't know. Those are kind of always popular with our community, but. Yeah, I think you've got most of the main games there, to be honest.
Cool.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's all the questions I have. So thank you very much for your insight. Thank you for everyone watching.